What's up everyone, S1 here, super duper fab, and as some of you should know, I play a lot of Dash.io and I make a lot of Dash.io content, and in my opinion, Dash.io has one of the strongest abilities in the game of Flesh and Blood, letting you look at what's on top of your deck and potentially playing it as an instant, which effectively gives you an extra card every turn as well as even an extra action point. And today I am going to share with you 3 different Dash.io builds, starting with probably the most established maximum velocity build. Max V is one of the strongest cards in the game, I believe, dealing 10 damage for just 2 resources, and all we have to do is boost 3 times. It's super straightforward. So the game plan of this deck is to resolve Max V as many times as possible every game, using them to push through boom grenades and deal a massive amount of damage in a single turn. In order to do that, this build plays a total of 39 boost cards, with 24 of them being 0 cost, so that we can consistently resolve a Max V. There's also 3 backup protocols to potentially resolve even more than 3 Max Vs per game, because you can bring them back, or you can just play 2 Max Vs in a single turn. The other items in the deck are 6 boom grenades for more damage off the top, as well as cerebellum processors for card draw and Teklo cores for resources. We usually either need a cerebellum or Teklo core on board in order to resolve a Max V. And to round off the deck, we of course have Spark of Genius, which is a tutor that can replace itself. It's an absolutely broken card and all the decks today will have this card. In the sideboard, we have Teklo Pounders for slower, more block heavy decks. We have Null Time Zones mainly for combo decks, and a few other boost cards for specific matchups, or just to put more cards in for fatigue. In total, we have 10 pieces of equipment. Dio has an absolute fridge when running Crown of Providence, Teklo Foundry Heart, Adaptive Plating and Heavy Industry Gear Shift. Then we have Braces of Belief and Achilles Accelerator for slightly more aggressive options, and Misfire Dampener and Visiatronic Model for some protection against arcane damage. Now we also have 2 weapons in this build. Symbiosis Shot is the weapon of choice for most matchups, but we also have Hanabi Blaster as an option for more grindier games in order to push through those last few points of damage with overpower. Overall, this deck can really push a big amount of damage in a single turn. Its spike turns have one of the highest ceilings, I think, in the game, but it can also be fatigued out quite easily and is pretty weak to disruption. And of course, this is the version of the deck that I've played the most out of the 3 versions. There's a bunch of videos both here on YouTube as well as on Metafy, where I also have a guide that you can purchase where I go much deeper into detail about the deck. So go check all that out, and I'm going to move on to the second build that I've been testing more recently. This has 0 copies of Max V. Instead, it is all built around BIOS Update. I love BIOS Update, just not together with Max V. A BIOS Update lets us essentially cheat in an item into play by boosting it straight onto the field. And I think this card just has an incredibly high ceiling. Of course, its floor is just a +3 power, but I think the advantage of BIOS Update over Max V, for example, is that it's less likely to get stuck in Arsenal, because sometimes you just Arsenal Max V, you don't find the boost cards, you don't have the resources, and sometimes you just get stuck in there until you lose the game. So BIOS Update, it's a bit easier to play out. All you need is another boost card in hand and you can just send it. So the overall game plan of this deck is quite different to the Max V deck, where instead of using Max V to push damage, we are trying to send multiple breakpoints every turn in order to push the boom grenades through. That's why almost all the attacks in this deck are breakpoints, and the only difference in terms of the items in the main board are the 2 penetration scripts over the 2 backup protocols. Now, Pen Script is really powerful. Playing it off the top is already quite good as a surprise attack reaction, but getting it in for free with BIOS Update can get us some ridiculous value, and keeping it around for additional turns is just nuts. Ideally though, we want them to stick around for at least 1 full turn, and hopefully we have enough attacks to get like 5-6 value out of it. In the sideboard, we once again have Null Time Zones, but we also have Plasma Mainline and Master Cog to get additional steam counters, and then we have Convection Amplifier and Teklo Pounders for more damage. And finally, we also have some recursion pieces with Prismatic Lens and Hyper Scrappers. So the idea is to get items into Banish and then use Prismatic Lens to get them back on top of the deck and play them out again. Something else that I really like about this deck is the Heavy Industry Surveillance headpiece. which I think works well when we're trying to dig for an item to cheat in with BIOS update. So especially when you have BIOS update in Arsenal and you're just digging for an item, this headpiece comes in and filters the top card for you, and it also blocks for a total of 3 value, which is pretty good. So yeah, I've just been having a lot of fun with this deck. The BIOS update turns can get pretty crazy and deal almost as much damage as Max V or sometimes even more. But I am pretty sure that it's slightly worse into Syndra compared to the Max V version. But maybe almost definitely slightly better into Fatigue and Disruptive decks. I don't know, I'm still testing it. There is a Battle Hardened coming up here in Singapore that I might bring it to. But if you do want to watch all these Talisha games, I will be posting them on Meta5 for free, and you can head over there and be a free subscriber to get notified when I post these videos with commentary. And I'm going to move on to the third and final build, the one that you clicked on this video for. It's Dio cosplaying as Puffin. That's right, this deck plays Copper Cogs, it plays Cog in the Machine, we have Palantir Aeronaut, Cogworks Dovetail, even Cogworks Zeppelin and Sky Skimmer. It's basically Puffin, just with Spark of Genius and Teklo Core. And I think it's actually half decent. It can push quite a lot of damage, and the Cog tapping attacks make it much harder for opponents to block boom grenades. We also just have access to more 0-for-4s with Sky Skimmers and Backspin Thrust. Unfortunately, cogs themselves are quite underwhelming, although being zero-cost blue crank items means they're at least very flexible. There aren't as many boost attacks in this build as well, and we can't really manipulate our top deck, so that means we are less likely to find an item on top each turn, but that's fine because that also means we are less prone to fatigue, which is great. And even if it gets to fatigue, we have Cog in the Machine, which theoretically helps us by letting us shoot Symbiosis shot twice each turn. I mean, technically it's only good if our opponents are low on life and low in cards as well, but it's an option. And another great thing about this build is that we get to play 9 T-Bones together with Palantir, so yellow T-Bones can come in from the sideboard and help with any Mask of Momentum or Flick Knives kind of decks. And I also love Master Cog in this deck, like more for flavor. And in the sideboard also against Fatigue, we have 2 extra Cogs, we have a backup protocol, we have red throttles, and I also threw in a Stasis Cell in there. Like, it's pretty useful against wizards, but more importantly, it helps us to hit the right equipment with our T-Bones and Palantirs by restricting what equipment our opponents can block with. So that's fun. Now, this is definitely not a competitive deck yet. Don't go looking at my results, but I'm sure someone out there, one of you maybe, can take this list and optimize it a bit more. I personally am not a big fan of Copper Cogs in general, no matter which hero you're using them in. But I think using them in Dio has some advantages. Like I said, you can play them off the top, we get more 0-for-4s, we get more poppers. Cog in the Machine is pretty good, and we get a good excuse to play Master Cog. Alright, please subscribe so that I can hit 10,000 subscribers and become a real influencer. And also head to Meta5 if you want to support me and also get access to more content, which is great. And of course, leave a comment down below, tell me what other heroes you want me to talk about. See ya.